Tell me what your constitutional concerns are, Professor.
So I have three primary concerns. The first has to do with the Fourth Amendment and the conditions under which a warrant is required and a general warrant is forbidden by the Fourth Amendment. So in this particular case, it's important.
Professor, before you give me one of your lectures, are you saying that we should require state and local law enforcement to get a warrant before they fight back?
It depends on the condition. So in an exigent circumstance or something along the border.
I'm aware of the exceptions to the warrant requirement. But you, generally speaking, you want to require them to get a warrant.
Only for the search of a device or the seizure of property. There are also due process implications of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You started to mention another one of your objections.
Okay. Did you just see what I saw? Senator John Kennedy walked into that hearing room and did what most people in Washington are too polite or too scared to do. He called it out. Straight. No chaser. We've got drones being used by criminals, bad actors, potentially foreign adversaries, flying over American soil. And apparently the big debate is whether local cops should even be allowed to do something about it. Then this professor shows up with a briefcase full of, well, actually, and Senator Kennedy saw right through it. I'll say this right now. I am tired of watching people dress up obstruction in academic language and call it wisdom. Senator Kennedy is not having it. And honestly, neither am I. If you appreciate straight talk over legal gymnastics, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this full reaction.
In the ports of entry, but that's not your experience, is it?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kennedy?
The bad guys are using drones. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. And the federal government has the authority to fight back, does it not? But state, nobody disagrees with that statement? Sure, Professor.
I would say within limits, yes. Within constitutional limits.
Okay. Do any of you disagree with giving state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back?
Again, within constitutional limits.
Okay. Tell me what your constitutional concerns are, Professor.
So I have three primary concerns. The first has to do with the Fourth Amendment and the conditions under which a warrant is required and a general warrant is forbidden by the Fourth Amendment. So in this particular case, it's important.
Professor, before you give me one of your lectures, are you saying that we should require state and local law enforcement to get a warrant before they fight back?
It depends on the condition. So in an exigent circumstance or something along the border.
I'm aware of the exceptions to the warrant requirement. But you, generally speaking, you want to require them to get a warrant.
Only for the search of a device or the seizure of property. There are also due process implications of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You started to mention another one of your objections.
First Amendment.
First Amendment. Okay. Any others?
Yeah, I also have a state rights, a 10th Amendment concern here, which is that states own the airspace adjacent to the land within their state that's not federally owned, and the current federal provisions don't recognize state sovereignty in that way.
So you want to give state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back, but you want to list a whole lot of conditions. Is that a fair assessment?
Not a whole lot, but some. There needs to be a nexus to the facility. It can't be any drone anywhere in America if you're concerned about a particular facility, but right now it's too broad. There have to be acknowledgements of First Amendment concerns. So for instance, limiting the covered facilities to the experience and logic test with which the courts use for right of public access, or prohibiting media bans across the board, or setting a time limit before and after special events so they don't extend extensively. This is what a number of state measures already do, and I'd like to see that at a federal level and apply to bring this within the constitutional limits.
Sounds like a lot of conditions to me.
No, not very many. As long as there's probable cause and the conditions are met, then absolutely you can.
Have you ever heard of a legislative practice called loving a bill to death?
Yes.
Okay? And that's when you take a bill and somebody says, I'm really for this bill. But then they add so many amendments and they screw it up so badly that the bill either becomes ineffective or doesn't pass. Is that a pretty accurate description?
Of the term?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're trying to love this to death, aren't you?
I disagree.
You're not really for giving law enforcement the power to fight back, are you?
I am in favor of giving law enforcement that power and respecting constitutional limits.
I don't believe you, Professor. Okay? You're not talking to Bambi's baby brother here. Okay? I've read some of your stuff. I think you'd be more intellectually honest if you just come out and say, I'm on the side of the bad guys here. I think we shouldn't give state and local law enforcement the authority to fight back. You're trying to make it as hard as possible, aren't you?
We'll have to disagree on that point, Senator.
Nah. You ever heard the expression, watch what they do, not what they say? I've watched what you've done. I know what you believe. Or you're on the FISA court?
I'm not on the court. No, I'm an amicus for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and the Court of Review.
Okay. Were you there when you guys issued all those bad warrants against Trump's people?
I can't discuss my work on the court, unfortunately.
Oh, it's top secret, right? You'd have to put me on the American people on double secret probation if you told them the truth, wouldn't you?
No. I can't discuss my matters that I've handled before the court. I can discuss the public ones where I've dealt with First Amendment concerns and the right to petition. I did an extensive history looking at that right
I'm done,
to petition.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. We're going to turn it over to Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Because it only gets better from here. All right, now that we've seen the whole thing, let me tell you exactly what I think. Senator Kennedy is one of the few people in that building who refuses to let witnesses hide behind their credentials. And this exchange is a masterclass in why that matters. The professor is clearly not a stupid person. The professor knows constitutional law. But knowing the law and applying it in good faith are two different things. Senator Kennedy spotted that gap immediately. Here's what got me. When Senator Kennedy asked the simple question, should state and local law enforcement have the authority to fight back against drones being used by bad guys, the professor couldn't just say yes. Everyone in that room agreed bad actors are using drones. Everyone agreed the government has authority to respond. But the moment it came down to actually empowering local law enforcement, suddenly we needed a Fourth Amendment lecture. Then a First Amendment concern. Then a 10th Amendment argument. 3 constitutional objections. Back to back. That's when Senator Kennedy dropped one of the most accurate descriptions of political sabotage I've heard in a Senate chamber. Loving a bill to death. You say you support something, add enough conditions and carve-outs, and either the bill collapses or law enforcement becomes so legally terrified to act that the authority means nothing in practice. Senator Kennedy didn't let that slide. Good. The professor said these weren't a lot of conditions, just some. But think about it honestly. A drone is flying over a critical facility. A threat is unfolding in real time. And the professor wants law enforcement to check for a nexus to the facility, weigh First Amendment implications, apply the public access test, mind the time limits around special events. By the time you run through that checklist, whatever the drone was doing is already done. Real threats don't wait for legal briefs. Then Senator Kennedy says, and I'm paraphrasing, I think you'd be more intellectually honest if you just admitted you're on the side of the bad guys here. I know that sounds harsh. But is he wrong? Because the effect of everything the professor proposed, whether intentional or not, is to make it as hard as possible for law enforcement to act. Enough friction in a system and the system stops functioning. That's not a side effect. That's the point. What sealed it for me was the FISA court moment. Senator Kennedy asks the professor about serving as amicus, basically an advisor, for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Then asks whether the professor was involved when controversial warrants were issued against Trump associates. And the professor says he can't discuss it. Classified. I'm not here to relitigate every FISA controversy, but the optics of that moment are hard to ignore. A constitutional law expert who just spent 5 minutes explaining why law enforcement shouldn't have more power suddenly can't answer questions about a court that many Americans believe seriously overreached. Senator Kennedy connected those dots live on camera and most people watching felt it. Here's my bottom line. Senator Kennedy came in prepared. He wasn't rude for the sake of it. He was direct because the situation called for it. Drones are a real threat. The public deserves law enforcement that can respond. And when a witness uses complexity as a shield against accountability, cutting through that is exactly what oversight is supposed to look like. Drop a comment below. Was Senator Kennedy too harsh, or did the professor deserve every bit of that? I want to know where you land. If you enjoyed this, share it around. This is the kind of Senate moment that deserves way more attention than it'll ever get from mainstream media. See you in the next one.